Studies presents Ayahuasca, Amazonian Shamanism, Science and Spirituality. This is tape number AUY 2004, Healing Practices with Jose Campos.
In advance that the session in which we will hear from Jose Campos, a traditional Ayahuasquero from Pucallpa, Peru, will speak first for about half an hour, and then Connie Grouds, an American pharmacist who's in an apprenticeship with a Peruvian Ayahuasquero, curandero, will speak about her experience, and then there'll be a discussion, and Ken Symington is going to moderate the panel for us.
Well, as Ralph mentioned, we're going to have Jose speak first, and I'll translate for him. And all I need to say about Jose is that I'm going to share my 3 personal rules of determining who's a good Ayahuasquero and who's a bad one. And the first one is that he doesn't use alcohol or put alcohol in the brew. That's a good Ayahuasquero. He doesn't put booze in the brew, and some of them do. The second one is that they must have a sacred intent or a connection with spirit. They don't have to be honest, and they often lie right and left and boast and brag, but they do have a clear intent with spirit. And the third one is that they smell good. And good Ayahuasqueros are very connected with perfume and smell and senses. So if they don't smell good, they're not good Ayahuasqueros. So with that, I'm going to say that Jose fits the 3 categories well. And I'd like to introduce Jose Campos, and you already know because of Ralph's introduction yesterday. So maybe Jose can come up here, and I'll translate from down there. Jose, si quieres venir.
Thank you very much. En quechua es Taita Suki.
So thank you in Quechua is Taitatsuchi.
Como esta conferencia se está basando en esta planta tan sagrada,
as this conference is based on this very sacred plant,
primero voy a cantar un canto chamánico.
I am first going to sing for you a shamanic song
en agradecimiento a un maestro que él me pudo enseñar,
as a way of showing thanks for a teacher of mine that taught me about ayahuasca first.
Introducir a este conocimiento, a esta sabiduría tan ancestral, de un regalo muy profundo a él.
Because he introduced me to this ancestral and deep philosophy. So this is my honor to him.
Él ya murió hace 3 años atrás.
He died about 3 years ago.
Fue un indígena lamisto.
And he was an indigenous person from Lamas, a town in central Peru.
Don Wilfredo Tanama Tananda.
His name was Don Wilfredo Tanama Tananda.
Entonces voy a cantarlo.
So I'm going to sing for you now.
Todo sobre la ayahuasca y la combinación de la ayahuasca, o sea, y la chacruna.
And this has to do with the combination of ayahuasca and chacruna.
Esos dos espíritus.
the two spirits in ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca y mamang taki taki muine. Ayahuasca y mamang taki taki muine. Chuya chuya medicina. Traina na 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 ina. Chuya chuya medicina. Traina na 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 ina. 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 Ayahuasca tronconcito manta, shamuriririririri. Ayahuasca tronconcito manta, shamuriririririri. Chuya chuya medicina, traina na 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 ina. Chuya chuya medicina, traina na 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 ina. 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 Ayahuasca shungoncito manta, shamuriririririri. Ayahuasca shungoncito manta, shamuriririririri. Chashpakujva medicina, traina na 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 ina. Sinche sinche medicina, traina na 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 ina. 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 Ayahuasca cogojito manta, shamuriririririri. Ayahuasca cogojito manta, shamuriririririri. Chuya chuya maririto, traina na 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 ina. Chuya chuya maririto, para mi cuerpecito, traina na 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 ina. 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 Ayahuasca pangoncita manta, shamuriririririri. Ayahuasca pangoncita manta, shamuriririririri. Chashpakujva medicina, traina na 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 ina. Chashpakujva medicina, traina na 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 ina. Chuya chuya medicina, traina na 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 ina. Traina na 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 ina. Traina na 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 ina. Ayahuasca chacrunera, shamuriririririri. Ayahuasca chacrunera, shamuriririririri. Quillo quillo maririto, para mi cuerpecito, cura cura espirititos. Traina na 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 ina. 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 Ayahuasca ticunera, shamuriririririri. Ayahuasca ticunera, shamuriririririri. Condor guagua, condor guagua. Guagua, guagua, guanquincitos. Quillo, quillo, maririto. Traina na 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 ina. Traina na 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 ina. Traina na na na, he he. Oh, he he he. Shamaricumpa. Ha ha ha. prácticas de curación de un ayahuasquero.
My talk is going to deal with the healing practices of an ayahuasquero.
El uso de la ayahuasca en la medicina tradicional de la Amazonía peruana está vinculado a un contexto de magia y misterio. Lo más usual es encontrar la unión de dos culturas de los ayahuasqueros. Primero, el de la magia que heredó de las culturas primitivas y que hoy en día predomina. El segundo, la influencia de la civilización occidental en el menor grado.
Well, the use of ayahuasca in the traditional medicine of the Peruvian Amazon is linked to a context of magic and mystery. The usual is to find ayahuasqueros that represent a union between two cultures, one of magic inherited from the primitive cultures, which is stronger, and the other one is the influence of Western civilization.
Ayahuasquero es un término amazónico de la región de toda la Amazonía del Perú, que designa al curandero que bebe ayahuasca. No es iniciado o improvisado, pues su formación dura años, incluyendo dietas estrictas, los cuales son guiadas por otro curandero.
The term ayahuasquero is a name used in the Amazon parts of Peru to designate a person who drinks ayahuasca, specifically a medicine man who uses ayahuasca. The ayahuasquero must be first initiated and cannot be a makeshift kind of person, because his initiation and instruction and training takes years, including a very strict plant diet under the guidance of another medicine man.
Siendo el ayahuasquero el depositario directo del conocimiento médico ancestral y un experto en el manejo de las plantas de poder, los ayahuasqueros en la Amazonía peruana han creado un conocimiento, un saber mágico, espiritual y empírico. Un aspecto de esta sabiduría ancestral es la utilización de plantas de poder de un contexto ritual.
The ayahuasquero is comes from a direct lineage of ancestral medical knowledge, and he's an expert in the use of magical plants. In the Peruvian Amazon region, ayahuasqueros have grown a knowledge which is magical, spiritual, and empirical. One aspect of this knowledge is the use of master plants within a ritual context.
En relación con las prácticas de curación de los ayahuasqueros tenemos la ceremonia de ayahuasca, las sopladas, las chupadas, las dietas de plantas de poder.
And in discussing the healing practices of ayahuasqueros, I'm going to describe 4 of them. One is the ayahuasca ceremony itself. Then the second one will be the sopladas in Spanish, which means literally the blowings. The third one is called chupadas in Spanish, which is the opposite. It's the suckings out of evil. And the last one, the fourth one, is the diet with the master plants.
Ahora voy a describir cada una de estas prácticas. Primero, la ceremonia de ayahuasca.
And now I'm going to discuss each of these 4 points. First, the ayahuasca ceremony itself.
El ayahuasquero inicia la ceremonia con un ritual sencillo. Los participantes sentados en rueda, en completo silencio, beben el preparado de la ayahuasca. Al transcurrir aproximadamente 30 minutos, los participantes entran en contacto con una experiencia de un viaje místico con la presencia de visiones, ampliación de los órganos de los sentidos, percepciones profundas. En otras palabras, ocurre un estado modificado de nuestra conciencia.
The Ayahuasquero begins the ceremony with a simple ritual. The participants sit in a circle and in complete silence drink the ayahuasca potion. After 30 minutes have elapsed, participants make contact with the experience of a sort of mystic journey with visions and an expansion of perception, and in other words, a modified, altered state.
El ayahuasquero acompaña el desarrollo de toda la ceremonia con cantos chamánicos, a través de los cuales invoca a los espíritus de las plantas, animales, espíritus del agua, de la tierra, del sol, pidiendo claridad para la mente. Los cantos cumplen una función importante en el desarrollo de la ceremonia. Es como el timón del barco. Es a través de los cantos que el ayahuasquero maneja y modula la energía grupal o individual de los participantes, sacudiendo rítmicamente la chacapa, un manojo de unas plantas secas. El ayahuasquero entona los cantos para movilizar la energía.
The Ayahuasquero accompanies the ceremony with shamanic chants, through which he invokes the spirits of the plants and also the spirits of the animals, water, earth, moon, and sun, asking for clarity of mind. The chants have an important function within this ceremony. They are like the helm of a ship. That is, through the chants, the ayahuasquero handles and modulates the group and individual energy, and he moves rhythmically the shaker, or so-called chacapa, which is a bunch of dried leaves of a small Amazonian plant, maybe 2-3 feet tall.
Frecuentemente pueden ocurrir vómitos. La función del vómito es purificar la parte física, psíquica y espiritual. Liberan bloqueos guardados que afectan nuestra vida, pues el vómito supone encarar, devolver lo que ha sido incorrectamente ingerido, ya sea por los alimentos o por malas energías que a diario estamos expuestos.
Often vomiting can take place, and the vomiting, or the function of the vomit, is to purify the physical, the psychic, and the spiritual bodies, to liberate or release the retained blocks of energy that might affect our lives. So the act of vomiting is an act of facing what has been incorrectly swallowed. We return physical, spiritual, and mental states that in all our time we couldn't metabolize. And within this context, the ayahuasquero sees and feels the body and the spirit of the participants, of each participant, and tries to ease the damages within each. And in doing so, he uses techniques like the following I'm going to describe for you.
Aquí hay una palabrita muy bonita que me gusta, que dice psíquica. En quechua, psiqui, para los psiquiatras, para los psicólogos, psiqui es la cabeza, ¿no? Pero para nosotros, para el quechua, es el culo.
And this is there's a very peculiar word that I had just used in describing my talk so far, which is the word psyche. And of course, for Western psychiatrists and Western psychologists, psyche means soul or spirit, but for Quechuas, the word psyche, or more specifically in Spanish, psique, means ass.
Dentro de este contexto, el ayahuasquero bebe, siente el cuerpo, el espíritu de los participantes y trata de aliviar los males empleando técnicas como la soplada. Son utilizadas para equilibrar la energía de los participantes y del contexto de la ceremonia. Esto es, se puede entrar mejor cuando el participante se encuentra en un estado de conciencia alterada o modificada, como queremos llamarlo, con sensibilidad acentrada. Por lo general las sopladas se dan con cigarro, o sea, con tabaco, o con otras plantas también. Bueno, yo los hago con otras plantas o con perfumes, con agua con alcanfor o camalonga, con flores. El ayahuasquero sopla el humo del tabaco a la cabeza, el pecho, la espalda y las manos. Y los participantes, previa el canto, he invocado a los espíritus de la naturaleza para que se manifiesten y ayuden a este fin. También se utiliza esta técnica cuando el participante atraviesa por momentos difíciles, acompañado del temor, del miedo. El ayahuasquero percibe las interferencias externas como los espíritus ajenos a la ceremonia.
The second technique used by ayahuasqueros is the so-called sopladas, or blowings. And the purpose of these blowings is to balance, to equilibrate the energy of each of the participants, and also the site of the ceremony itself. This is a lot easier to understand, and of course a lot more effective if it is done under a state of altered reality. If you're in a trance produced by the ayahuasca, because that increases the sensitivity of each person, and you can perceive the effect of the soplada much better than if you were doing it in a state of ordinary conscience. Commonly, what the soplada consists of, or the blowing, is they're made with smoke from black tobacco, a black tobacco cigarette. It could also be made from other plants other than tobacco. And also it is done with camphor water, which is water with some camphor dissolved in it, or actually flower waters of different kinds, made with different flowers and the fragrance involved. The ayahuasquero blows this smoke or these liquids in the participant's body, sometimes in the head, in the chest, in the back, in the hands, while at the same time chanting the caros to get the help of the nature spirits. The blowings are also used in moments when the participant is going through a particularly difficult time or a difficult moment during the session, like in a moment of fear, when a person is in deep fear, or in moments where the ayahuasquero perceives the presence or the influence of outside spirits trying to come into the session.
Las chupadas es otra técnica de curación utilizada a un nivel energético para extraer algún malestar específico del cuerpo. No puedo hablar más de eso porque es difícil, ¿no?
The third technique is the so-called chupadas, or suckings, literally. And these suckings are used to cure, to heal in an energetic level, and the purpose of which is to extract a specific illness from the body of the participant. and I would find it hard to explain more about how this is exactly done.
Aquí viene lo bueno, la dieta con plantas de poder. En la Amazonía peruana, las plantas de poder más conocidas podría ser la ayahuasca, pero hay muchas otras plantas más todavía que no quisiera enumerarlas durante mis 15 años de práctica que lo tengo. Sin embargo, es la única que existe ahora en la actualidad de un gran número de plantas de poder menos conocidas que tienen una función importante en la iniciación chamánica y como prácticas curativas. Por ejemplo, existen las plantas de poder por lo siguiente. Hay una planta muy bonita, que es una familia del chirisanango, es un sanango, que es una planta que nos abre el corazón, especialmente para abrir el corazón. Bueno, sí.
In the Peruvian Amazon, the better known and the most powerful master plant known is, of course, ayahuasca. However, in addition to ayahuasca, there is a whole variety of other master or teacher plants, some of them used in healing directly, and some of them used in the initiation of shamans. For example, these are some of the master plants. There are some plants that open the emotional level, that open your heart. And incidentally, it's a relative of the chirisanango, which is the Brunfelsia grandiflora plant that you see, the big one right here. This plant specifically opens the heart.
Estas plantas de poder específicamente para abrir el corazón, esto implicaría destrabar muchos rasgos afectivos, emocionales o guardados, reprimidos en algunas etapas de nuestra vida. Abrir el corazón implicaría un rejuvenecimiento de la parte afectiva de la persona, conectarse con ese sentimiento para la niñez.
This plant that opens the heart, that opens up our affect, is used to release constraints that we have held back or repressed all of our lives. And what I mean by opening the heart implies a rejuvenation of our affects, of our affective part. And this opening would enable us to connect with some very pure feelings brought back from childhood, from a long time ago.
Existen otras plantas para enraizar a la persona, aquellos que tienen rasgos muy soñadores o aéreos. Esas plantas se harían pisar tierra, enraizar.
Another group of these plants that we use are plants destined to give one roots, to bring us down, namely to bring us down to earth, to help people that are very airy and very up there, to come down to earth and to ground themselves, to set roots down in the earth.
Existen otras plantas de poder específicas para profundizar los sueños de tal manera que soñar sea más claro, recordatorio con las revelaciones.
A third category of these plants are those that are used to reveal and make clear dreams. And their function is to have you remember the dream and reveal the dream's meaning to you.
Existen otras plantas también de poder para fortificar el cuerpo y el espíritu.
There are other plants, another group of plants that are used to fortify, to strengthen body as well as soul. They're strength-giving plants.
Existen otras plantas de poder también para realizar una limpieza profunda del cuerpo, del espíritu. Así podría yo seguir enumerando muchas plantas de poder.
There is still another group, for example, of teacher plants that are used to produce a deep cleaning of the body, a purification of the body. And I could go on listing many different kinds of plants that have functions similar to the ones I've already mentioned to you.
Todas estas plantas de poder requieren de condiciones especiales para ser ingeridas. Ahora contaré una experiencia que tuve atrás, hace muchos años atrás, en una de mis dietas, con una planta de poder. Antes de iniciar, recuerdo que me llamaba mucho la atención el origen de los ícaros o de los cantos que el curandero entonaba. Canta la ceremonia de ayahuasca, invoca la ayuda de los espíritus de la selva, de las plantas de poder, de los animales, de los cerros, de los ríos, de todo, lo considera todo sagrado en la vida. Cuando preguntaba a los curanderos cómo se aprende los ícaros o los cantos, ellos me respondieron: los ícaros se aprenden durante la dieta, ingiriendo plantas en la selva. Allí los espíritus de las plantas, a través de sus espíritus, te visitan, te conversan, y a través de los sueños te enseñan los ícaros. Era incomprensible para mí, para no aceptar tales respuestas, ya que rompía mis esquemas mentales. Es así como decidí comprender tal hipótesis, y la mejor forma de comprobar era someterme a una dieta cumpliendo todo lo que el curandero me indicara. Por aquel entonces conocí a don Guillermo Janaba, famoso curandero, en la cual me propuso hacer dietar y me dio a conocer las reglas de una dieta.
Now I'd like to tell you about the experience I had, one experience that I had doing the diet with the plants. And I remember that before my initiation, I recall how the shamans' chants, the Icaros, always attracted me and had a big appeal to me. And during the chants, of course, the Ayahuasquero invokes the spirits of the animals, the plants, the trees, and the jungle, and because everything is considered sacred and having a spirit. And I asked the shamans, how is it that you learn the Icaros? Who teaches you the Icaros? And they told me essentially that what happens is the spirits of the plants visit you during the sessions, and then it is the spirits of the plants themselves who chat with you, and during the session and the visions give you the chants, teach you the chants. This was hard for me to accept because my mind couldn't understand how this was possible. So I decided to prove it. And the best way to do it was to actually do my first diet and following what the shaman said. Then I had the good luck of meeting a famous shaman, Ayahuasquero, Don Guillermo Onahama, and then he gave me the rules for the diet, which are:
durante los 14 días nos aislamos en la selva virgen y tomar plantas de poder, como el quilluwiki, el chuchuhuasi, el kame caspi, el acerohuasca, la bobinsana, en forma muy concentrada. Solo podrás comer un tipo de plátano verde y agua. Nadie podrá visitarte. Permaneceremos solos totalmente.
And he said, all right, these are the rules. During the next 14 days, you will be isolated in the virgin jungle. And you will be drinking the master plants, and they will be in concentrated forms or potions. And some of these plants would be kiyuwiki, or chuchuwasi, or kame caspi, or acerohuasca, bobinsana, and many others. And during that time, you can only eat green bananas and water. Green bananas meaning plantains. And then you will not be able to see anybody during the 14 days.
Luego don Guillermo prosiguió diciéndome, cuando cumplas los 14 días recién comerás sal, con eso se corta la dieta y regresarás a tu casa a seguir dietando por un mes como mínimo con abstinencia sexual, incluyendo la alimentación azúcar, dulce, carne, chancho, alcohol y ají.
And then Don Guillermo also told me that when you reach, or after you reach the 14th day on your diet, then you can eat salt and that will break the diet. That's the end of the diet. When you return home and for at least a month thereafter, you will continue to eat lightly, and that means no sweets or sugar, no pork, no alcohol, nothing hot or chili, and no sexual activity. And you are to do that for a month.
Conociendo todas estas reglas, me sometí. Acepté ir a la dieta. Al día siguiente nos internamos a la selva. Allí me esperaba un ligero tambo, una casucha muy pequeñita de material tradicional y las plantas de poder ya preparados. Don Guillermo cada mañana me levantaba muy temprano para tomar el preparado de plantas de poder y decía, pídelas, que te enseñan los sicaros, diles que tú tomas su savia porque quieres aprender el conocimiento, pídeles con el corazón, no con la mente, en la soledad de la noche, con el chillido de las aves y las luces de los insectos. Don Guillermo se acercaba a mi lado de fe en lo que hacía, entonces entonando icaros llenos de misterios. Cada vez que terminaba de cantar decía, mira, la noche está llena de vida, ya demora de pasar el chuyachaki, el tunchi, el espíritu del monte silbando, aguardando muerte, y el ayahuma, el ave que llora por los niños abandonados, los presagios del urcututo, ave que según su canto nos avisa las cosas buenas o malas.
So, knowing all of these rules after he told them to me, I accepted to do the diet. So the next day we went deep into the jungle where I stayed in a tambo, a sort of like a thatch roof cottage. And the master plants had already been prepared for me. Every morning Don Guillermo woke me up very early in the morning to drink the plants and to tell me, now Jose, ask them to teach you the icaros, the songs. Say that you're drinking their saps because you want to learn with your heart, not with your mind. Ask them to teach you the icaros. Then in the solitude of the night, with the sounds of the birds and the light of the insects, Don Guillermo approached me and sang with great faith about what he does, and singing the carols full of mystery. And once he finished singing, he said, look at the night which is full of life. And in this night, the Chuyachaki would be passing soon. The Chuyachaki is sort of like a forest elf with only a lame foot. It's a spirit of the forest. And also the Tunchi would be passing through. And the Tunchi is a spirit of the woods that announces the death of someone. And the Ayamaiman, and the Ayamaiman is a bird that cries for abandoned children. And also the passing of the Yurkututu. And the Yurkututu is a bird that, depending on how he sings, he may be announcing good or bad things.
Cada día que pasaba, cuerpo y mente y espíritu se volvían muy sensibles y comenzaba a percibir fuertemente la tierra. Yo comenzaba a percibir muy fuertemente a la tierra, a los vegetales, hasta poder ni el olor de la ciudad para tomar un olor de selva. Así transcurría la dieta hasta que en el sexto día, por la noche, recostado en mi cama, al cerrar mis ojos comencé a tener visiones, imágenes geométricas, piramidales, circulares, cúbicas, triangulares. Cada imagen poseía un color diferente, muy suave, angelical, irradiaban luces, se acercaban a velocidades fantásticas, describiendo formas ondulantes, jugateando. Entre ellas eran imágenes vivas que otro lenguaje me decían, nosotros te vamos a cuidar, no tengas miedo, así como vinieron, así se fueron. Yo seguía en un estado consciente, con los ojos cerrados, visualizando una nave inmensa, poderosa, en forma de plantas que se enredaban entre sí. Era una nave de plantas que justo pasaba encima mío, cantando y carando, silbando en forma muy alegre, diciendo: soplando, soplando, voy por los caminitos de los pueblos, mis amiguitos, con los palos y bejucos, ay que lindito.
So as the days passed, my body and mind and spirit became very sensible, and I began to strongly perceive the earth and the vegetation, and my body smelled of the jungle. And after the 6th day, lying on my bed, I began to experience geometrical designs in pyramidal, circular, triangular, and cubic shapes. They were very vivid images that told me, we're going to take care of you, don't be afraid. And as they came, they disappeared. And as I looked, a ship was passing above me, whistling. And as the ship got farther in the brilliant sky, it talked strange things. And Guillermo's dog barked and barked as he perceived something weird. That was the end of my experience, and wrote it. So then next day, before I said anything to Guillermo, he asked me, last night the spirits of the plants visited you. So I finished my 14 days of diet and returned to the city, following 1 month of diet after that, as Don Guillermo had suggested.
Bueno, todo este camino está abierto a cualquier persona, pudiéndose experimentar y comprobar su motivación, esfuerzo y más que todo la fe en que hace, la dieta que nos abre puertas a nuevos conocimientos, dándonos así un acceso a otros niveles de realidad normalmente ocultos a nuestras percepciones habituales. Por esto se ubica con el elemento principal de iniciación chamánico peruano. Esta vivencia personal a la cual tuve la oportunidad de acceder demostró ser una experiencia muy sutil, efectiva de manejo energético, abriéndome puertas a un nuevo enfoque de la medicina, del conocimiento humano y de la naturaleza en general. Gracias.
So this was my experience, and I will finish by emphasizing the importance of the diet when initiating a shamanic path. In order to learn ancestral wisdom, the diet improves our physical, psychic, and spiritual condition. It increases our perceptions. It develops our dreams in a very deep way. It helps us to understand ancestral wisdom. It helps the body at an emotional and a rational level. And finally, it enormously increases our perception. This path is open to everybody. It just requires motivation, effort, and faith. The diet opens space for a new knowledge, giving us access to other levels of reality, which are normally hidden to us in an ordinary state. Thank you very much. I have 3 rules on how to select good shamans, but I don't have any rules on how to select good pharmacists. So I assume that Connie passes all rules.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, everybody. As we were talking yesterday, as a pharmacist coming into all of this, prior to my first experience with ayahuasca, I would have said, what's a nice girl like you doing in a room filled with people like this? The hardcore scientist in me certainly was one of those sorts of people who pathologized anything unusual, any altered state experiences. So it is with much reluctance that this body and mind has been in the process of apprenticing to shamanism. As I mentioned briefly yesterday, prior to my first experience with ayahuasca, I was working at a corner store pharmacy, and my only connection with the plant kingdom, my only conscious connection with the plant kingdom, was the fact that I had an African violet in my house. It was green, therefore I watered it. That was it. Well, after my first ayahuasca experience, the plants started to tell me of their medicines directly. And of course, as I mentioned yesterday, I thought I was losing my mind. And the long and the short of it, thanks to the help of a very kind psychotherapist who kept shoving articles about shamanism under my nose, suddenly I began to realize what was happening here. Underneath all of this, with all of this urgings of the plant kingdom, all of this green stuff happening inside, shortly thereafter, I felt an urge to go into the primal Amazon Peruvian rainforest. So I thought I went once again as an ethnopharmacist and an ecotourist in this part of my mind. But of course, what I was really going was to really experience that energy in a very deep level. And when I got there, it was like putting an artist in the Louvre. I mean, there were plants everywhere. The energy that I was now so attuned to was so vivid and brilliant and so overwhelming that I started having spontaneous visions. And I mentioned something to the tour guide, who said, "Oh, I think I better introduce you to one of the shamans here, Don Antonio, and maybe he can help you." At which point he takes a look at me, and I was all confused and crying and couldn't figure out what was happening, and his answer to the whole thing was, "You have enough energy to be a shaman yourself." And I said, "No, but you don't understand. These are my problems, blah, blah, blah." And he just shrugged his shoulders and sort of left it at that. I came back to America having been sort of blown open, to say the least, by this experience. And in a very profound healing crisis, my old life disintegrated and my new life began to be forged. By that whole experience, I would say that I became re-spirited in my profession of pharmacy. I left conventional pharmacy and I formed a professional educational association. That's what I do for a living. I teach pharmacists about the use of herbs and natural medicines throughout the United States. So I've become an educator in the field of natural medicine. So the plant kingdom certainly gave me a job, and I took on my job as kind of being the ambassador to the plant kingdom with much vigor. So the new, renewed, respirited self returned shortly thereafter to continue my apprenticeship in shamanism. That's what I want to talk about here today. Certainly, if we look at what a rainforest shaman is, we have to say that they are healers that use medicinal plants and use the healing spirits of nature and the healing spirits of the plants that they use to invoke for the healing of their patients. And they also have the ability to transfer energy. We'll talk a bit about that energy transference. And they have devoted their lives for the sake of the people that they help. So how does this happen, and what role does ayahuasca play, and what's been my experience in all of this? I must say that I'm not a student of shamanism. I'm an experimenter of shamanism. So you'll have to bear with my experiences of this. In some sense, in these experiences, my rational scientific mind needed to go. It actually was part that got in the way. I could stand up here as a pharmacist and go into the pharmacology of ayahuasca and the plants, but the point of the matter is that was the very thing that was getting in my way to the full experience of what was about to happen. As far as the medicinal plants, the use of medicinal plants, certainly the rainforest shamans are experts at the pharmacology of the medicinal plants that they have there. And I, in my practice back here in the States, use the medicinal plants that we're most familiar with, the ginsengs, the chamomile, so on and so forth. They're the ones that I have a relationship with. As far as the experience of the apprenticeship itself, the dietas and the disciplinas, the diets and the disciplines that I've been through in the past 6 years with this apprenticeship, are, as Jose said, really quite strict. Mine that were given to me to do consisted of the first 2 years of my apprenticeship. I would say in hindsight that this was probably a time of testing. I had various rules and regulations and rituals that I had to do, which in hindsight I think were one of trying to find out if I was committed, if I would show up, and if I could follow rules. We in this in our Western society don't know, we're free thinkers. We don't have to follow anyone's rules and disciplines. We don't have gurus and masters. So it was really kind of one of, can she do this? Can she make a commitment? Can she follow what it is that I'm going to say? Because over time, we were going to go into some very dangerous realms, and if she can't do it now, she isn't going to be able to do it later. So, having passed all of that, sometimes on the wagon, sometimes off the wagon, as the first 2 years was passing by, certainly there was a bit of skepticism on my mind. What's happening? Nothing's happening. How do I know? Is this person any good? What am I doing? All of the chatter that was going on in my mind. Well, after the first 2 years, clearly I was going back every 6 months for 2 and 3 weeks at a time to live in the northern Peruvian Amazon rainforest up the Napo River outside of Iquitos and working with Don Antonio. This must really be happening. So to begin with, it was trust and belief in my maestro. The next 2 years got even tougher because it was dieta time. For the next 2 years, it was one of no sugar, no salt, no grease, no alcohol on a 24/7 basis for 2 years solid. So, needless to say, what I do for a living is educate throughout the United States. I packed my food in my luggage, and that's what I had to do. And I shopped at organic grocery stores wherever I went and didn't eat with the rest of the folks and accepted that part of what was happening. In that part, certainly any of us who have fasted, and I'm sure everyone in this room has, and followed a diet, we know that it energizes us. It really not only cleans us out, but it energizes us. And then I began to experience that kind of nectar running inside of myself all the time. Even without the supercharged experience of ayahuasca, there was this pump that would circulate in my body, all of this ecstatic nectar. Oh, it is worth it. The next 2 years, which has been the past 2 years of my dietas and disciplinas, have been even more severe. This past 2 years, I've just completed, almost completed 2 years of no sex of any kind. And I thought to myself, my goodness, I'm not married, this will be easy. I've got it made in the shade, and of course, the minute you take a commitment like that, in comes the boyfriend, all the things, all the tests, all the things. You've all been through them yourself. But the bottom line is having to do that sexual restriction once again. To me, this is part of the experience of sensitizing you. It increases your telepathy with and without ayahuasca, and it certainly gives you the energy to be able to transfer to sick people. And as a pharmacist, that's what I run into. It not only shows commitment to the spirit realm, commitment to your maestro, and as you all know, the deeper the commitment, the more powerful the medicine. So keep that in mind, your teachers and your guides along the way. When it gets tough, remember, if I can do it, you can do it. The deeper commitment, you will receive the rewards on the other end. And by that I mean as follows. In the experience of working with the shaman Don Antonio every 6 months for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, when I go there and work with him with ayahuasca, it's every other day, an every other day situation with ayahuasca. And where I'm at, having followed, so that you can see what the results of these 6 years of extreme dietas and disciplinas are, is as follows. When I first started accepting the apprenticeship as a shamana in training, and he was guiding my first experiences with ayahuasca, what I would see consistently in the experiences were 2 spirit doctors, 2 apparitions way deep down the jungle forest. And over the years and over my commitment, these spirit doctors have gotten closer and closer. They are a man and a woman, and they are dressed in white pharmacy medical garb, just like our physicians here. So you tell me what that's going on as a reflection of myself, but that's it. A guy and a gal. And over time, they've gotten closer and closer and closer until the time when they finally appeared and they were talking to me, but I couldn't hear them. I was still at the point of the plastic baggie. Other things were happening, but I just wanted to distill the part that's about the healing portion of it, as far as the spirit doctors and the healing of others. Finally, Don Antonio told me to bring 2 friends with, 2 acquaintances with me to my next trip to Peru. So I did. I brought 2 women along with me. And we went, and I had no idea what he had in mind, but one of them wanted to be treated as a patient. She was a 50-something-year-old post-polio syndrome survivor with a sort of a withered left leg, and the other woman just wanted the experience of ayahuasca and a general kind of a healing. So we get to the ayahuasca ceremony, and this time the spirit doctors appeared fully. They came through and they started speaking, and I could hear, and they went straight for Kay. Kay is the 50-something-year-old post-polio syndrome survivor, and I thought, here's the spirit doctors. They're going to go straight for her withered leg. That seemed to be the most obvious problem that she had. But they didn't do that. They walked around behind her with this big, huge bowling ball size of energy, pure white light energy. And they started at the top of her spine and systematically pressed that ball of energy down her spine for what seemed like about an hour. I was in such awe. I didn't have the presence at that time to ask any questions. But when they finished with the ball of light at the base of her spine, they vanished. And that was the end of the experience. And the next day, Kay asked me, well, what happened? Did the spirit doctors come? Was there a healing? What happened? And I said, well, they did, but I don't know. I thought they would come for your leg, and what they really did was take this ball of energy and work down your spine. So I really don't know what that was all about. Well, she was just jumping up and down with glee because she said, Connie, don't you remember the etiology of polio, the CNS, and the spinal cord? My motor neurons that are failing me these days need some revitalization. I'm in the palsied stage of my life. So what was happening, in essence, was this life force. These spirit doctors were revitalizing her motor neurons down her spine with life force. And certainly while it was not a cure for Kay's polio, it was certainly a stabilization and a revitalization of what was happening with her. And checking in with her a couple of months after that experience, she said that she felt that her post-polio syndrome had stabilized somewhat. We had a day off from the ceremony. The next day, we drank again. And what happened were the spirit doctors arrived right on cue, and they went up to Jenny. So I thought to myself, well, what are they going to do for Jenny, since Jenny doesn't have anything she's complaining about? She doesn't have anything wrong with her. And they started to examine her all around her stomach for the longest time. And this time I was a little wiser, and I said, are you trying to show me how to palpate a patient? So I leaned over and tried to reach on Jenny's anatomy in her stomach, the same places that the spirit doctors were. And they said, no, Connie, you don't get this. This is not about you. It's about us. We do the work. You host the vision, and we're busy now. So I sat there, and these spirit doctors are people just like you and I. They move just like you and I. They are solid beings. Suddenly the world is inhabited by at least 2 more people. And then they proceeded to concentrate in the lower left-hand corner of her pelvis for the longest time. And they looked at me, the spirit doctors looked at me, and they said, she's got ovarian problems. And I said, no, she doesn't. She didn't complain of any. And besides, what do I do about it? And they said, remember what we said. You don't do anything. We are going to perform spiritual surgery on her. So they performed the surgery, and then they left. So the next morning when we all gathered, Jenny had asked, did anybody arrive for me? Did the spirit doctors come? Did the spirit doctors come for me? And I said yes. And in the meantime, just about when I was going to speak, Don Antonio interrupted, and he said, Jenny, I know you've come a long way from America with much discipline on your part, and money, and all of this travel and effort that it's taken on your part, and I'm very glad that you came here for a general healing to see what this is all about. He said, but I've got news for you. He said, I have to tell you that you have ovarian problems. Now, I had not talked to the shaman over the night, and all of a sudden, what I'm trying to say is we're having this mutual experience together, that she has ovarian problems. So for the first time in all of my life that I had been secretly pathologizing or dismissing all of this, I was being verified by the shaman who's saying that she has ovarian problems. So my goodness, I'm onto something here now. Something is happening and it's really working. So then he went on to say, she says, oh, what do I do about it? What kind of ovarian problems? And Don Antonio said, don't worry, you don't have to do anything about it. The spirit doctors perform surgery on you. Now I know, indeed, that there is another level of reality to which I had been entering and could now communicate and work with, and that reality is the one of the healing spirit doctors. Now, if that isn't enough corroboration, Jenny pipes up and says, well, that's really interesting because when I was an adolescent, I had ovarian surgery. She said, my mother took DES when I was in utero and I had ovarian problems as an adolescent. So interestingly, she had re-corroborated what was happening in this whole experience. So for the first time in my life, I felt that all of this was beginning to make sense, that this was indeed for the sake of others, that all of the dietas and disciplines I had done were actually coming to fruition, that this maestro was able to show me the way to the path and the plane for the sake of others. Suddenly, these whole experiences of ayahuasca were not about me anymore. We don't do the mommy-daddy biography anymore. It's all about you. And that is the big difference. So we had another day off, and then the third ceremony of the week, in come the spirit doctors, and they come directly for me. And they come and check in on some surgery, some throat surgery that I had had earlier. And as they're checking in on my throat, I said very, very kindly, thank you so much. I'm learning to communicate with them now. Thank you so much for checking in on my health. They said, you're fine in that department. By the way, that's a whole other story we don't have time for, but another shamanic story to be told. But in any event, they said, you're fine in that department, but that's not why we're here. We are here to give you your voice. And with that, music filled my being, and the Icaros just poured out of my mouth. And I am not a musical person. I really don't understand it. I don't kind of believe in it, but it started to happen. And Don Antonio likes a very structured experience, so he came over and he told me to be quiet. So I tried to shut up, and these sounds were just vibrating, and they started pouring out again, and all of a sudden he got it. He goes, oh my goodness, she's being given the Icaros. Sing, sing, child, sing, sing, they're coming. So with that, I really fully understand, as Jose had said, I have to rubber stamp that in my personal experience, and that is that, for me anyway, that they are given during ceremony in a very special way. So these spirit doctors in these Icaros that have been given to me, I now understand with a knowingness, as you know, that I know, when we all know, when we know something. That's sort of ineffable, that we can't really describe the mystery of how it is. But I began to really sort of ponder, how would I describe these spirit doctors to people other than to simply tell you the story? What are you really in essence anyway? What are you? And so about a week later, I had this really profound dream where they sort of arrived like genies out of the bottle, and they said, you rang? And I said, yeah, how do I explain to this group? Who are you? What are you? And they said, we are the sheer unbridled healing forces of nature that you as a shamana in training are learning how to focus and call upon for the help of others. We diagnose, we prescribe, and we heal. So this is a profound experience of the very, very, very deepest of plant medicines. Somehow this whole ayahuasca experience, in my opinion, my experience, has been one of falling more deeply, deeply, deeply falling backwards into the plant kingdom to meet the great healer, the mother goddess nature herself. It's really a very, very profound, deep healing. The other thing that happens, as I mentioned very briefly, as Jose was talking about too, is the ability to transfer these energies, not only to call upon the doctors, the spirit doctors, but to transfer energies. Shamans can transfer energies without ayahuasca, using tobacco, using limpias, which are cleansing herbal baths. We'll see a little video, a little clip of one in a moment. And just the Icaros. And if any of you have had the wonderful experience with a trained shaman to have a limpia or Icaros without ayahuasca, it's almost more mind-blowing to have an altered state experience by someone else's ability to transfer that energy. It's a very powerful experience. What I would say in the wisdom that I bring forward for all of us here is I really feel that the spirit doctors have made themselves manifest for us. I really feel that the spirit doctors have shown us a way about spirited medicine. You know, when is working with Don Antonio, he said to me, describe your medicine in the West. Could I become a physician? Could I come to America and be a doctor? Would I be famous there? What would happen? And as I explained to him our medicine here, he said that he was not interested because it didn't have any magic in it. Well, I suggest that these spirit doctors have come forth because we lack magic in our Western medicine. We need a re-spirited medicine with spirited healers. I feel these spirit doctors have come forth for you, physicians, clinicians, and healers in the audience, and those of you out there to learn in the future, who really want a profound divine connection with the tools that you use, be they herbs, be they your hands, acupuncture needles, whatever it is, and certainly with your patients, to become re-spirited in yourself. I feel that the spirit doctors have come forth for pharmacists who are beginning to understand that there's more to medicine than the 100 Valium they put in the bottle. I feel that the spirit doctors have come forth and people come my way who have broken souls and broken hearts as well as broken bodies. And for the dispirited people of this culture especially, who need a connection with their career, who need a connection with nature that they are part of, who need a good, solid, loving relationship that's nurturing and all of those good things. You know, in talking with Don Antonio, he says that he believes that there's only one kind of disease, and that's the disease of disconnection and dispiritedness. And that is the essence. So a shaman doesn't care whether you have a bad job, a bad relationship, or asthma. The healing is kind of the same. It's one of imbuing you with spirit and rekindling you to the connection with your life force. So the dispirited people in general who come, clinicians, healthcare practitioners, and so forth, I really feel that this is the time that our Western medicine needs respiriting. I want to show a brief little 5-minute video. We will be talking a little bit about conservancy issues. I will have a lot to say on that. We spirited people have, and Matthew, if you'll get that video ready, we spirited people of the ayahuasca spirit have truly an obligation. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. I have some very strong feelings about this particular group and conservancy issues here. But in light of paying back my shaman, my maestro, the rainforest, the keepers of the vine and its spirits, I'm going to show you a little bit. I filmed a documentary this past summer, which will hopefully help some of the conservancy issues that La Selva Conservancy, the shaman and myself and those interested people have formed. So I'd like to show you a few film clips. It's more kind of an experiential. The full hour-long documentary will be available on CNN sometime next year. So if you'll just relax a bit before lunch, I think this is a fine way to kind of encapsulate what we've been talking about here this morning and the nature of this conference. So Matthew, please.
Un buen día para trabajar. Ya una semana te digo, todos los días. Y es suficiente. 3 por 4. 9 días. Hay 6 días de ayahuasca. Siempre las mezclas hay que tener, especialmente en el Tawé, no más de 4 hojas. Y una flor que sea viva y suficiente. Ahora vamos para la otra mezcla.
¿De cuánto se pone el mes?
Bueno, se pone nomás unas 50 horitas. Ya es suficiente, está como no es mucho.
Sí.
Vamos al chile en plena mareación. Da bastante frío y cura especialmente los huesos. Y eso hay que tener mucho cuidado. El tamango se pone con el centro. Los gallos no se pone mucho también. Tiene unos 50 hojas. Esto se pone para endurecer los huesos, para no ser muy hormigón.
Esto se ve muy oscuro.
El copal. Sabes muy bien que el copal es la resina de un árbol. Y este copal es un buen símbolo de quemar esto, para hacer esto. El tabaco, ¿qué es esto? Este tabaco siempre se utiliza para humear a la persona, prendido. El alcanjor es para preparar con agua. El tabaco, cuando se te termina esto. La chacapa, sabes que es para adormecer muchos dolencias que sufren las personas. Tienes que tener en conocimiento el ayahuasca. Tiene que ser cocinado hasta que se quede como melaza. Ahora, usted a una edad ya, te digo a ellos, y me quedé solo, me han criado con mis abuelos, murieron ellos, otra generación me agarró, otra familia me crió y hasta que llegué a una edad buena, y luego salí yo a la ciudad para tratar de sobrevivir.
So we're not going to have time for questions now, because it's time to take our lunch break. I would like to point out that tomorrow afternoon there'll be a panel with Jose and Connie and